I had a session recently with someone I've been working with for a while now who's done some beautiful healing work that has included healing from abusive past relationships, empowerment, all things around that, and is really coming into such a beautiful spot of healing, of worthiness, of feeling much better. I'll just say it like that and get into more of the story of what I want to share here. She just talked to me recently about going on a date for the first time in a while, with somebody completely new to her, and afterward was processing feelings that were coming up around that. And I walked her through this guided meditation to tune in and drop out of her head and down into her heart, and to pull in her intuition and access to her higher self. And as we were doing that, we were kind of body scanning and doing some somatic work, energy healing work at the same time. And I said, as you're tuning into the reflection on how that date went, what are you noticing in your body? And there's a fluttery kind of feeling around the heart chakra. And this is excitement and openness, some energy in the heart space moving around, and all felt pretty positive. At the same time, the reason why we did that guided meditation was because she started off that conversation with, like, the date went beautifully. I had a lovely time. And now I feel really nervous afterward, right? That, did I do this too soon? Am I making a misstep? Am I unsafe? Simply that, like, the trauma triggers from the past. There was no particular trigger around this date or this individual. It's just the notion of dating itself and opening my heart back up to love. And, am I exposed? Like, am I at a place of healing and depth with that where I can do this safely? And so this really comes down to relationship to self and what we're asking when we start to step into that arena. Sometimes there's some projection that happens there, and we are focusing on the external. Can I trust this person? Can I trust that person? How many red flags were there? How many green flags were there? And we can get into a very heady space of analyzing and attempting to apply all the attachment theory, psychology background type of things to figure this out and make an educated move in the relational dynamic there, right? Or the dating scene. So what really we're arriving at when I'm doing this work with her, and of course, as I've said in other videos, things seem to theme. So I've had this conversation with very similar conversation with multiple different people this past week. This is coming down to relationship to self. Your sense of security, safety, feeling grounded, rooted, centered, tethered, all of those things is not coming from an answer to the question of, can I trust him? Can I trust her? It is more about, can I trust myself? Do I feel connected with my own intuition, my own emotional attunement? And when I notice something rising that doesn't feel good, can I trust myself to have my back? Am I in this empowerment and my worthiness and able to pull closer that link to my higher self whenever I need it, I have my own back. And that releases you into a seat of gentle surrender and openness in that heart chakra space. I can enjoy this state and take it for what it is and be present and in the moment instead of jumping 10 steps ahead or getting to this place of I'm trying to scan the environment and make like an Excel spreadsheet of green flags, red flags, and trying to figure out a relationship in that kind of a way, which is, it kind of reminds me of that movie Along Came Polly with Ben Stiller, where he's really trying to navigate the risk of being with this woman in that way. So kind of tracking with that movie. So as we're doing this work, she's pulling back into herself and settling into that space and falling into that. I feel so much more worthy in a deep and resonant vibrational. The frequency is echoing through my body and the room of my worthiness kind of way now. And I did not feel remotely that way 6 months ago before we began this work. And so when you are thinking about going into the dating scene, do we need to pick up a shield and make sure that you're armored up? Now I'm totally blanking on what the name is of that stuff that soldiers wear, whatever, like a medieval soldier. I want to have that word, but I don't have it. You can picture what I mean, like the all silvery type of thing from head to toe, right? Like, I'm ready for my date, and then you lift your metal shield up. Okay, now do you feel protected and safe, right? No, I just feel like really heavy and hot, and I'm wearing some uncomfortable metal. Okay, it's an illusion. So, the more you lean into armoring up and walling up, that lean is pulling you outside of your empowerment, right? And so when you notice yourself grounding, rooting, pulling in your higher self, you'll feel that armor sheath fall right off to you, clunk, clunk, clunk onto the ground, right? Because you then have a more deep, truthful, like divine truth, soul-centeredness when it comes to recognizing where is your safety coming from. And it doesn't come from fear. Fear pulls you out of yourself and out of safety. And that's what makes you want to put all that armor on. And you're going to be further and further away from your seat of intuition anytime you're armored up. And your intuition is your safe house, isn't it? This is what you want to be connected to, because when you get really heady and over analytical and you're trying to use that kind of, from your programmed mind, discernment, that is not reliable the way that we convince ourselves that it is. It's an illusion. It's a false sense of security and safety. And think about how many times you functioned from that seat and been sorely disappointed, I'll say, or have realized, as in my head as I got and as over analytical as I got, It seemed to not serve me the way I wish it would have in this dynamic, this situation, right? It, like I said, that pulls you out. So doing that type of meditative practice, when you start to feel yourself leaning into, "Ooh, I want to armor up," is like, oh, okay, I need to know that my true power comes from grounding, rooting, centering, and finding that well of safety, security, stability inside of myself that never leaves me, that's always accessible. And that is where I find my divine essence, the truth of my deep worthiness that is unmovable, and the truth of I radiate love energy. I feel that so strongly through my being that vibrational state will allow your intuition to be fully present for you. And you do that while having an open heart. An open heart doesn't mean you're a sitting duck, right? An open heart with the grounded, rooted, I'm seated in my intuition while I have an open heart space allows you to move from a place of being very self honoring, and instead of armoring up, we're going to boundary up, right? We put boundaries in place. And I don't even want to say we put boundaries in place because it sounds like a thing that's like set it and forget it, instead of maybe boundaries are more like breathing. And it is, how do we make that a lifestyle that feels so natural and integrated to that seat of intuition where it's presence, it's not planned out, right? Um, Moment to moment with what feels right and what doesn't feel right, and honoring ourselves and sitting into that. That's where you find the safety of knowing I'm all right to open my heart space up. It's all right for me to go on a date and enjoy it. It's all right for me to go on a date and not enjoy it and say, you know what? Had a nice time. I don't want to do that again. Something didn't feel quite right to me. And that's not a problem. It's just information. It's just feedback, a feedback loop. And everything you experience from that place of being anchored in yourself doesn't need to be categorized as a win or a foul, and just experiencing ourselves through this life, through relationships, through mirroring, all those kind of things. Another perspective that I want to share around this, that I hope will help to encourage that feeling secure and settled inside of yourself, is when you do that kind of healing where you feel your relationship to self is filling your cup. I've got a full cup that I'm coming into this dynamic with. I radiate such a deep level of self awareness and integration, self love, trust, and honoring. That's really what you need to know if you're asking, am I ready to go on a date? Right? That would be my questions, not like, well, who is the person? And let me look at their background information, or let's check out their socials and determine if you're safe or not. It's really more of those kind of questions and that introspection. How do you feel about yourself deeply? Where does your sense of worthiness feel like it's at? And I think confidence and worthiness are two different things. Confidence is a little bit more external, right? So if you say, Miranda, how confident are you that if you went on American Idol, you're gonna have a positive experience? I would say not confident at all. Singing is not a talent of mine. But if you say, how worthy do you feel that you are deeply, and how connected are you with that, and just the way like you honor yourself and you move, that should be, when you're in a healed space, you want that to feel that it doesn't shift, regardless of if you are engaging in activity that you're highly skilled at or that you are talentless um, at, if that makes sense. So those are the questions that to ask yourself is, where is my sense of relationship to self? And if it's not at a full cup, do the things for yourself. Come to therapy, do the energy healing, do all the holistic work, whatever kind of things you need to prioritize you. That is the foundation of relationship, of all other relationships. Every other relationship in your life is going to be in some ways mirroring back to you this, what is inside, what is there, right? And so this is sometimes where you'll see people have some, what I'll say, like trauma reenactments or some repeated patterning in their relationship history of, wow, I'm noticing these relationships all had this very similar theme, or I seem to attract this certain archetype or personality traits, right? It's yes, ma'am, because universe is doing that for you to show you what needs to be, what needs a light shown onto it for your benefit, because the relationship with that person, if you don't have that full cup, is always going to come forward to show you what's half missing, so that you can then go, okay, how do I get that part half full within myself? And that full cup is, you're setting yourself up for failure. I think anytime you try to enter a relationship when you don't have that cup full, because it's immediate pressure on the other person to pour into you in a space that deeply only can be achieved through relationship to self, really. The story I'm about to tell is quite, I think, can be taken for so many different interpretations, but I'm going to connect it here for whatever reason. It's just coming into my mind. I was told the story when I was growing up about the farmer's donkey, which probably a lot of you have heard of. But for those who aren't familiar, it's the story of this elderly donkey on a farm who can't see all that well anymore or whatnot. And so he falls into this deep well, and the farmer and his neighbors come over to look, and they're trying to figure out how to get this donkey out. And it seems like there's no way to do it. And the donkey is also very old, and so they end up coming to like a realization of, we're just going to have to give up, I guess I'll say that. So they the plan then becomes to bury the donkey alive, which I hate even saying that out loud. It sounds so terrible, right? And it is, but the story itself, stay with me. So they're pouring shovels full of dirt into the well onto the donkey, and at first they hear this awful crying, and they just keep at it with pouring the dirt on top, and it is then quiet for quite some time, not hearing anything. And soon enough, the farmer looks in and is astonished to see that after all these shovels full of dirt have been thrown in, the donkey has, with each load of dirt that is felt on its back, shaken it off, stamped it down, and stood up on top of it. And so by the time they're done filling that well, the donkey is at surface level and steps right off and out of the situation. And I'm drawing this equivalent because, of course, this is about believing in yourself, trusting yourself, persistence, endurance, all those type of things. But I also want to pull this into what we're talking about with trusting yourself and figuring out how to feel safe in relationships and dating and love and relationships in general. In terms of, I can have an open heart and I can be vulnerable and authentic to myself. Because if you are walling up and you're not being vulnerable, you're really probably not fully in your authenticity, right? And that doesn't feel good in general. So having that open heart, being authentic, feeling like the full you with no holds bar on that, and knowing you can do that safely, because the safety, it's an illusion to wall up like that, right? If this donkey had armor on its back, its ability to feel when dirt landed would be compromised. Actually, it would be opposite, contradictory, right? That armor is going to desensitize. I can't notice, I can't feel right when things are landing or not, or when something is, you're disturbing the feedback loop. And so this is the parallel I draw of, like, that open heart is serving you when you know how deeply rooted and anchored you are into your own safety, grounded centeredness, self love, and empowerment. When you're in that space, you start to understand what keeps you inside of that self honoring safety is the open heart. It is not armoring up. So the next session, when this person came back in, more things transpired in this dynamic. And she says, kind of based on the incoming information of the additional communication text exchanges with this person since the first date, like, ooh, I'm feeling something. And then it has this questioning of, is what I am feeling right now coming again from this place of kind of a fear-based ego mindset? Am I overanalyzing? Um, or am I intuitively and in an integrated way perceiving and honoring my feelings about this situation? So I dropped her into a very similar guided meditation as what we did the first time, which yielded a different outcome. And based on this information, she still resulted at a place of, or came into a state of feeling very peaceful and connected, and just like, here's the information, boop. And that's, I think, a piece of where you can notice how it feels different when you are speaking from that space of intuitive self-honoring and knowingness. Let's say knowingness, that's a good way to say that, versus overanalyzing. Is the overanalyzing feels cluttery. There's more words. Like, if I ask somebody, like, tell me how you are thinking about that, there's more swirling around type of words. Excuse me, throat chakra energy there. To validate and demonstrate what I'm talking about. When you jump into that over analyzing kind of space and questioning yourself and trying to use your discernment from a place of thinking it through rather than knowing and feeling it, that's what happens. You get that throat chakra block and the words don't come out as smoothly. But when you drop into the knowingness and that intuitive place, it feels like a more smooth, succinct kind of one-liner, which was, she just rattled off the information in such a beautiful way that, from a knowingness of, I'm noticing this person is engaging this type of projection and insecurity, and it is, and I am perceiving correctly and honestly that there is not a resonance with that path for me, and it is not going to serve me. And there was a peace and a very settled, peaceful and very settled energy to her as she engaged in that meditation, drawing in the knowingness and the divine guidance from her higher self. Beautiful. And we had a conversation around the difference and the progression between where she was before going on, right before going on that first day, a session after, and then and 2 sessions after, and the um, path unfolding for her around that. And there was a piece of her that then was dropping into this, because this didn't, because I don't want to continue with this person, and based on the intuitive knowingness that I'm perceiving inside of myself as I call in my higher self forward, maybe this means I made a misstep. Like maybe I wasn't ready to date at that point in time. And so, there again, rising back up into a higher perspective on that of, does your path forward of allowing the information to be revealed, being very attuned and self honoring with that, using that inside of your therapy sessions to become even more familiar and intimate with your energy, intuition, attunement, is that all problematic? Or is that all a beautiful thing? And so she shifted her view of that to knowing, when I am noticing my divine guidance steering me, how do I deeply honor that in a way where it doesn't make me question where I was 3 steps, 5 steps, 10 steps back, right? Trusting the process and trusting the path, all of the rocky, meandering elements of it included, and knowing all of it is happening for you, unfolding beautifully in front of you, and your journey of presence, self honoring, and learning how to deeply honor yourself is a piece of, I'm not going to question the rock that was 2 steps behind me, right? Um, and so she really shifted her perspective on that. And as I asked her to attune to, how are you feeling right now? As I saw this big smile and just beautiful energy coming from her, of like, she's just so inside of her worthiness on a deep way that is not manufactured or artificial. The resonance is astounding. And I just, it makes me glow seeing her glow like that. So I said, how are you feeling? I noticed this big smile. And she goes, I just never knew before this how my whole system of my emotions and my thoughts, my mental space, my intuition, my bodies and somatic symptoms, I didn't realize all of it and the interconnection until now. And I didn't know I had a higher self to use. And now I do. And every time I use that, it has changed my life. And I said, amazing, amazing. Like, it blows my mind to have somebody start working with me who will say, I guess what I want to say is, like, this is the work I do, right? This is the work I do. Even when somebody is coming in, not having like a full intentionality of connecting into their higher selves and doing the trauma work and that kind of thing, for her to realize and get to that space of intimacy with her higher self. There it is. That's where the self honoring is coming in. That's where this worthiness and this depth of resonance and this is all coming together of the more we're able to connect in and pull and anchor down our higher self energy into this vessel and into the way we move in this life and in relationships. There is where you lean on your sense of trust, faith, safety. That comes from your relationship to self and the divine, first and foremost. I just finished a session where, again, this stuff themes, I tell you, it does. And this person is talking about some underlying kind of things that are showing up in a negative way in his relationship and wanting to heal that. And mentioned something at the end of the conversation after our first meeting at the close of that hour of, I feel some relief and I'm noticing just in this first hour in the conversation that we've had, that this is going to be a very different experience with you than I've had with my last therapist. And I said, expand on that a little bit more. And he said, as he was talking about his relationship issues and, surface level kind of symptoms, that therapist was jumping into what I call rescuer reflex, which is this, you tell me that you have a problem and I'm seeing the weeds on the surface of that garden, and I jump right in to get my hands dirty with the clippers and I start clipping and telling you where to clip. Yep, let's take care of that. Let's remove that. Get that relationship out of your life. And it's like, whoa, 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 we're overstepping there. That's disempowering. And you're completely missing the depth of the underneath, the trauma wounds, the seeds of negative belief and schemas that are rooting, sprouting into the weeds that you don't like. When you stay on that surface level of trying to jump into solving someone's problem for them by advice giving, and turning it external even more so, rather than looking into that person and the deeper healing that they need and deserve, then what you're doing is setting that person up for repeated karmic cycles and a life full of symptom management, right? You don't want to be managing symptoms for the rest of your life. You want to get to those roots and clear that out, integrate, heal so deeply that the clip, clip, clip is symptom management, so that you don't have to manage symptoms because they are no longer there. And symptoms is really just information that we're meant to know so that we can discover the deeper healing we deserve and that we're meant to receive to be in our highest spiritual life path plan. Love is, let me start, how do I want to say this? I think there's an opportunity when you heal and come into a more full sense of your worthiness and embodiment of that higher concentration of your higher self, that some of the things that are very patterned around attachment styles, attachment theory, all of that, we can transcend to some degrees, or certainly at the very least be mindful and not controlled by those in the way we move with ourselves and others. There is a lot spoken about attachment and suffering in Buddhism. And so I'm drawing on that a little as I speak about this. When you come into that more whole divine union within yourself, and we move up to the 5D rather than the 3D and look at love from that lens, then we know love is not dominion, love is devotion. And love is not control, love is sovereignty. How are we fully ourselves in a way that maintains that sovereignty and that union in ourselves, in the way we relate and connect to our counterparts? And the how do we is by making sure we maintain all those things within ourselves and for ourselves. I anchor into the depth of my divine essence every day, in every way. I am coming closer to who I truly am and rising into the purity of my soul's essence, my natural divine vibration, and that eternal worthiness.